The pirate ship moved slowly through the field of broken metal and glass. Captain Dreth stood at the main window, his forearms crossed behind his back. His yellow eyes scanned the floating debris from a recent battle. Destroyed ships, broken weapons, and burnt pieces of armor drifted past in the darkness of space. "Anything valuable out there?" Dreth asked his crew. A thin, nervous alien named Yiplik checked his scanning equipment. "Some metal we can sell. A few weapons that still work. Wait, Captain, I'm reading a life sign." Dreth's long tail swished with interest. "Show me." On the screen appeared a small escape pod spinning slowly among the wreckage. The scanner showed one heartbeat inside. "One living being. Pull it in," Dreth ordered. "Let's see what we caught." The crew used the ship's mechanical arms to grab the pod and drag it into the cargo bay. Dreth walked down from the bridge, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. Around him, his crew of 43 pirates gathered to see what they had found. The pod door hissed open. Inside, strapped to a seat, was a human male. He was unconscious, his head hanging forward. His flight suit was torn and dirty, but he appeared uninjured except for some cuts and bruises. "A human," whispered Gorvak, the first mate. He was a large, gray-skinned creature with tusks. "Do you know how much they pay for humans at Quorum Station?" Dreth did know. Humans were rare in this part of space. They were valuable because they could adapt to many environments and were stronger than they looked. Slave traders loved them. "At least 50,000 credits, Dreth said, a smile spreading across his reptilian face. "Maybe more if he's healthy." They called Chithrax, the ship's doctor. The spider-like alien clicked across the floor and examined the human with several of his 8 legs. He checked the human's pulse, looked at his eyes, and scanned his body. "He will live," Chithrax announced. "Minor injuries only. He is strong, good muscle, good bones. Yes, he will bring much money." "Take him to the holding cells," Dreth commanded. "Put him with the others. And watch him. Humans can be clever." 2 guards grabbed the human and carried him through the corridors of the ship. They passed through narrow hallways and down metal stairs until they reached the prison area. Energy barriers glowed blue across several cells, each holding captured beings from different worlds. They threw the human into an empty cell and activated the barrier. The blue light hummed to life, creating a wall of energy that would shock anyone who tried to pass through it. Inside the cell, the human lay still on the cold floor. In the next cell, a blue-skinned merchant named Phalox pressed against his own barrier to look at the new prisoner. "Another poor soul," he said sadly. "Welcome to our floating prison, friend." The other prisoners looked over too. There was a massive rock-like being called Thudrak who only grunted. There were small, furry creatures who whispered to each other in fear. There were a dozen beings total, all captured over the past month, all waiting to be sold. Hours passed. The ship's lights dimmed to simulate night. Most prisoners tried to sleep on the hard floors of their cells. Then the human moved. His eyes opened slowly. He didn't gasp or jump up in panic like most prisoners did when they first woke. Instead, he remained very still, only his eyes moving. He looked at the ceiling, at the walls, at the energy barrier. He studied everything carefully, like he was taking a picture with his mind. Finally, he sat up. His movements were controlled and calm. He touched his ribs, checking for broken bones. He felt his head where a bruise was forming. He stretched his arms and legs, testing them. "Hello there," Phalox called out from the next cell. "My name is Phalox. I'm sorry you are here. The pirates captured you, yes?" The human looked at Phalox but said nothing. He just nodded once. "They will sell us at Quorum Station," Phalox continued, trying to be friendly. "It is 3 weeks away. I am a merchant. I have money. Maybe I can buy my freedom. But the rest..." He trailed off sadly. The human stood up and walked to the barrier. He looked at it closely but didn't touch it. Then he turned and examined every corner of his cell. He ran his hand along the walls, feeling the metal. He looked up at the ventilation grate. He counted his steps from one wall to another. Phalox watched him with curiosity. "What is your name, friend?" "Taesung," the human finally said. His voice was quiet and calm. "I am Phalox, as I said. That large one is Thudrak. The small furry ones are Keeble family. Over there, whoa, how many guards?" Taesung interrupted. Phalox blinked his large eyes. "Guards? Oh, usually 3 during day cycle, 2 at night. They change every 6 hours. Why do you... How many crew total?" I don't know exactly. Maybe 40, 50. But friend, you should not think about escape. The barriers will hurt you very badly if you touch them. And even if you got out, where would you go? "We are in space," Taesung didn't respond. He sat down in the corner of his cell where he could see the corridor and both guard stations. Then he closed his eyes and began to breathe slowly and deeply, like he was meditating. Felix watched him for a while, then shook his head and went back to his own corner to sleep. The next morning, the guards brought food. They pushed bowls through small openings in the barriers. The food was a gray paste that tasted terrible but provided nutrition. Taesung ate his portion slowly, watching the guards the entire time. He noticed which guard carried keys, which carried weapons, which looked lazy or bored. After breakfast, he began to exercise. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. He moved through the routine like it was something he did every day, like it was as natural as breathing. The other prisoners watched him with confusion. Most people who were captured and locked up became scared or sad or angry. They cried or screamed or gave up. But this human seemed almost comfortable, like being in prison didn't bother him at all. Days began to pass. The pirate ship, the Crimson Talon, traveled through space toward Quarium Station. Captain Dreth was pleased with his catch. He spent his time counting his money and planning what he would buy with the profits. But some of his crew began to feel strange about the human prisoner. There was something about the way he watched them. Something about his calm silence. Something that made them uncomfortable. "He never looks afraid," one guard said to another. "Every prisoner is afraid. But not him." "Maybe humans don't feel fear," the other guard replied. "Everything feels fear," the first guard said. "Everything with a brain feels fear. So why doesn't he?" In his cell, Taesung continued his routine. Exercise, observation, meditation. He counted the seconds between guard rotations. He memorized the sounds the ship made. He studied the electrical flow of the energy barrier, and he waited. He was patient. Patience was something he had learned long ago, in another life. A life before this? A life he was trying to return to when the pirates found him. Taesung had been going home. After 20 long years, he had finally been going home to Earth, to Seoul, to his sister Hyejin. He had thought his fighting days were over, but the universe had other plans. As he sat in his cell on the pirate ship, Taesung allowed himself a small, cold smile. The pirates thought they had caught a valuable prize. They thought they had found an easy 50,000 credits. They had no idea what they had really caught. Not yet. But they would learn soon enough. 1 week passed aboard the pirate ship. The days and nights blurred together in the prison cells, marked only by the meals that arrived twice per day cycle and the changing of the guards. Taesung kept to his routine. Every morning he exercised for exactly 1 hour. Push-ups until his arms burned, sit-ups until his stomach ached, stretches that kept his body flexible and ready. The other prisoners thought he was crazy to work so hard when they would all be sold as slaves anyway. But Taesung knew something they didn't. A body at rest grows weak. A mind at rest grows dull. He needed to stay sharp. Among the prisoners was another human. Her name was Jiwoo, and she was younger than Taesung, maybe 26 or 27 years old. She had been an engineer on a civilian transport ship before pirates attacked and took her. Her hands were small and delicate, meant for working with tools and machines, not for fighting or hard labor. She was scared. Taesung could see it in her eyes and the way her hands shook when the guards came near. But she was trying hard to be brave, to not cry, to not give up hope. On the 8th day, Jiwoo spoke to him in Korean. She had heard him say his name to Felix and recognized it as Korean. "Are you from Seoul?" she asked quietly, pressing close to the barrier between their cells. Taesung looked at her. "Yes, me too. Gangnam District. I lived there before."
"Before this?" Her voice cracked a little.
"Do you think we'll ever see home again?" Taesung didn't answer right away. He had learned long ago not to make promises he couldn't keep. "I don't know," he finally said. "What did you do?" "Before they caught you, I was a soldier." Jiwoo's eyes lit up with a spark of hope. "A soldier? Then maybe you know how to fight? Maybe you can help us escape?" "Maybe," Taesung said. But his tone made it clear he didn't want to talk more about it. He went back to his corner and closed his eyes. Jiwoo felt disappointed but also curious. There was something different about this man. Something the other prisoners didn't have. When the guards walked by, everyone else looked down or away. But Taesung watched them. Really watched them like he was studying them for a test. The guards noticed too, especially one named Scrix. He was a large insect-like creature with multiple arms and a bad attitude. He liked to scare the prisoners, to make them beg and cry. It made him feel powerful. On the 10th day, Scrix decided to have some fun with the quiet human. He deactivated Taesung's cell barrier and walked inside, his claws clicking on the metal floor. The other guards watched from the corridor, some laughing, some looking uncomfortable. "You think you're tough, human?" Scrix hissed. His voice sounded like stones scraping together. "You sit there so calm, so quiet. Let's see if you're still calm when I break your fingers." Taesung didn't move from where he sat. He just looked up at the creature looming over him. "Stand up!" Scrix shouted. Slowly, Taesung stood. He was not as tall as Scrix, but he didn't look small either. He stood straight, relaxed, his hands at his sides. Scrix reached out with one clawed hand to grab Taesung's arm. What happened next was so fast that most of the watching prisoners missed it. Taesung moved. His hand shot up and grabbed Scrix's wrist. He twisted, turned, and suddenly the large guard was spinning through the air. Scrix crashed into the wall with a loud bang. Before he could recover, Taesung struck him twice, once in the neck, once in the head. Precise hits. Professional hits. Scrix collapsed to the floor unconscious. The corridor went silent. Every prisoner stared. Every guard stared. Taesung calmly walked back to his corner and sat down as if nothing had happened. Prisoner attacking a guard. One of the watching guards shouted into his communication device, "Send backup to the prison level, now!" Within minutes, 6 more guards arrived with weapons. They aimed their plasma rifles at Taesung, who didn't resist or run. He just sat there, hands visible, breathing calmly. "Come with us," the lead guard ordered. "Captain wants to see you." They put heavy chains on Taesung's wrists and ankles. The chains were meant for beings twice his size, but they weren't taking chances. They dragged him out of the cell and down the corridor. Ji-woo pressed against her barrier, watching him go. Her heart pounded. That speed, that skill. This man was no ordinary soldier. They took Taesung to a room without windows. It was cold and empty except for a metal chair bolted to the floor. They chained him to it. Captain Dreth entered, his yellow eyes studying his prisoner carefully. "That was a stupid thing you did," he said. "Scrix is one of my best guards. You could have killed him." "I didn't," Taesung replied simply. "No, you didn't." "Why? He's not worth killing." Dreth's tail swished in annoyance. "You're brave for someone in chains. Or maybe just stupid. Either way, you cost yourself. That little display just lowered your value. No one wants to buy a slave who fights back. Then let me go." Dreth laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding. "Let you go? We're in the middle of space, human. Even if I opened an airlock and pushed you out, you'd just die. No, I have a better idea. We'll beat the fight out of you, make you obedient. Then you'll still sell just for less money." He nodded to the guards. The beating was brutal. They hit him with metal rods in their fists. They were careful not to break any bones or damage his face too badly, but they made sure it hurt. Taesung endured it in silence. He had been trained for this. Pain was just information. His body was screaming at him, but his mind stayed calm and distant. He went to a quiet place inside himself, a place he had built during years of missions and torture training. When they finished, they threw him back in his cell. He landed hard on the floor, his body covered in bruises and cuts. Ji-woo gasped when she saw him. Oh no, are you okay?" Taesung slowly pushed himself up to sitting position. He tested his arms, his legs. Everything still worked. Nothing broken. He had survived worse. "I'm fine," he said. "Fine." "You're bleeding!" "Here, take my water." Ji-woo pushed her water ration through a small gap in the barrier. Taesung took it and drank slowly. "Thank you." "That was incredible," Felix called from his cell. "The way you moved. I've never seen anything like it." "Are all humans so fast?" "No," Taesung said. "Then how did you learn to fight like that?" Taesung didn't answer. He closed his eyes and began to control his breathing, slowing his heart rate, managing the pain through sheer mental focus. Ji-woo watched him, fascinated and frightened. She had grown up in Seoul, lived a normal life, gone to university, become an engineer. She had never seen anyone like this man. He sat there covered in injuries but completely calm, like pain couldn't touch him. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way Taesung had moved, the precision of his strikes. She remembered stories she had heard growing up, whispered rumors about special soldiers who did secret missions, ghost operatives some called them. The government always denied they existed, but maybe they did exist. Maybe one was sitting in the cell next to hers. Up on the bridge, Captain Dreth was having similar thoughts. He sat at his command chair, staring at his computer screen. He had been searching databases all evening, trying to find information about his mysterious prisoner. Nothing. No records. No identification. No matches in any system. It was like the human didn't exist. That's not possible, Dreth muttered. Everyone exists somewhere in the databases. Everyone has a record, unless they were erased, unless someone with power had deleted all traces of them. Dreth felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had been a pirate for 30 years. He had learned to trust his instincts. Those instincts had kept him alive when others died. Right now, his instincts were screaming at him. He opened a communication channel to his information broker, a shadowy being who sold secrets for money. I need you to find everything you can about a human male. I'm sending you his genetic scan and biometric data. The response came back 3 hours later. It was short. Stop looking. Get rid of him. Don't sell him. Don't keep him. Just let him go, and forget you ever saw him. Then the broker cut all contact. Captain Dreth stared at the screen, his 4 hands trembling slightly. What had he caught? Captain Dreth couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about the broker's message. Stop looking. Get rid of him. Don't sell him. The broker was never scared. He had survived in the criminal underworld for decades by knowing things others didn't. If he was warning Dreth to get rid of the human, there was a good reason. But Gorvak, the first mate, disagreed. You're being paranoid, Gorvak said the next morning when Dreth called a meeting. So the human can fight. So what? He's locked in a cell. He's alone. We have 43 crew members and weapons. What can one human do? The broker wants us scared so we don't sell the human, Gorvak interrupted. Maybe the broker wants to buy him for himself at a lower price. It's a trick, Captain. Don't fall for it. The other officers nodded in agreement. They liked the idea of 50,000 credits. They didn't like the idea of throwing away that money because of some vague warning. Dreth wanted to believe them. But the cold feeling in his stomach wouldn't go away. Down in the prison cells, Jiwoo was gathering courage. She had spent 2 days watching Taesung, seeing how his bruises healed faster than they should. She saw how he exercised even with injured ribs, how nothing seemed to break his focus. Finally, late one night when the guards were far away, she whispered to him in Korean, "Who are you really?" Taesung opened his eyes. He had been meditating, but he had heard her question. "I told you. My name is Taesung. No, I mean, what are you? You're not just a soldier. Soldiers don't move like you moved. They don't stay calm like you stay calm." She paused, gathering her courage. Are you one of them?" "One of who?" "The ghosts. The operators everyone says don't exist. The ones who do impossible missions." Taesung looked at her for a long moment. In the dim light of the cell, his eyes seemed older than his face, like he had lived many lifetimes. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally said. But Jiwoo saw the truth in his non-answer. Her hands started shaking. "Oh my God. The pirates don't know, do they? They think you're just a normal person they can sell. It doesn't matter what they think. Yes, it does. If they knew what you were, they would..." She trailed off, not sure what the pirates would do. Let him go? Kill him? Run away? From the next cell, Felix had been listening. The blue-skinned merchant moved closer to his barrier. "Excuse me," Felix said softly. "I don't mean to interrupt, but I think I know what the young lady is talking about. I heard a story once at a spaceport bar. A trader told me about human special forces. Ghost operatives, he called them. The Terran military says they don't exist, but everyone in the criminal world knows the stories." "What stories?" Jiwoo asked. Felix's voice dropped to a whisper. "They say these operatives work alone, deep in enemy territory. They do missions that are impossible. Assassinations, sabotage, rescue, intelligence gathering. They're called Reapers because when they appear, death follows. The trader said he once saw the aftermath of a Reaper's work. An entire enemy base, 50 soldiers, all dead or unconscious. One human did it all by himself." Jiwoo felt her blood turn cold. She looked at Taesung, seeing him differently now. The scars on his arms, she had thought they were from accidents or old fights. But now she saw them as a map of his life. Burn marks from plasma weapons. Straight lines from blade cuts. Small round marks from bullets. Each scar was a story of survival, of battles fought in darkness where no one would ever know the truth. That's just a story, Taesung said quietly. Stories get bigger every time someone tells them. But he didn't deny it. Not really. The next morning, something happened that changed everything. Yiplik, the nervous communications officer, was monitoring the usual radio frequencies when he accidentally picked up a military transmission. It was heavily encrypted, but the ship's stolen military equipment started trying to decode it automatically. Fragments came through, broken and unclear. Priority Alpha target. Code designation Reaper. Operation Black Veil. Presumed killed in action. Terran High Command orders. The message cut off as the encryption adjusted and blocked the signal, but Yiplik had heard enough. His hands shook as he contacted Captain Dreth. Captain, you need to hear this. When Dreth listened to the recording, his face turned pale. His tail went rigid with fear. Reaper, he whispered. We have a Reaper on this ship. He called an emergency meeting with his senior crew. They gathered in the war room away from the ears of regular crew members. Listen to this, Dreth said, playing the transmission. When it finished, the room was silent. It could be a coincidence, Gorvak said, but his voice lacked confidence now. A coincidence? Dreth's voice rose. We have a human prisoner with no records. A human who can fight like nothing I've ever seen. A human who stays calm even when beaten. And now we intercept a military signal about someone called Reaper, who was supposedly killed in action. You think those things aren't connected? Even if he was this Reaper person, another officer said slowly. The transmission said he was killed in action. Maybe he's just a soldier who survived something terrible. Maybe he's not dangerous anymore. Dreth wanted to believe that, but he couldn't. We need to get rid of him, Dreth said firmly. Tomorrow, when we pass through neutral space, we put him in an escape pod and jettison him. Let him float away. He'll run out of air in a few days, but that's not our problem. That's 50,000 credits floating away, Gorvak protested. I don't care. Dreth slammed one of his 4 hands on the table. I've been a pirate for 30 years. I've survived by knowing when to take risks and when to walk away. This is a time to walk away. The meeting ended. The officers left, some agreeing with their captain, others unhappy about losing money. But none of them noticed that the ventilation grate above the war room had the smallest gap. None of them knew that sound could travel through that gap to other parts of the ship. In his cell, Taesung sat very still. He had heard every word through the ventilation system. He had been listening to ship sounds for days, learning how voices traveled through the ducts and pipes. So they wanted to jettison him in the morning. They finally realized he was dangerous. He had been planning his escape for days, taking his time, making sure everything was perfect. But now he needed to move faster. Tonight. It had to be tonight. Jiwoo noticed the change in him immediately. There was a subtle tension in his shoulders, a new focus in his eyes. What's wrong? She whispered. They're going to kill me tomorrow, Taesung said simply. So I'm leaving tonight. Leaving? How the barriers, the guards, I know. Go to sleep, Jiwoo. When things start happening, stay in your cell. Stay safe. I don't understand. How can you escape? 1 person against 40 pirates? Taesung looked at her, and for the first time she saw something cold and ancient in his eyes. Something that had seen too much death, dealt too much death, become too comfortable with death. 43, he corrected. I've counted them all. But that's impossible. No, Taesung said softly. It's just difficult. He closed his eyes and began to breathe slowly, deeply. He was centering himself, preparing his mind and body for what came next. For 20 years he had been a weapon, a tool. The Reaper, he had thought that part of his life was over. He had been going home to Seoul, to his sister, to peace and normalcy and a life without violence. But the universe had put him here, in this cell, with these pirates. And now the Reaper had to wake up one more time. What should I do? Jiwoo asked. Do you want to get home? Yes, more than anything. Then when the barriers go down, get to the shuttle bay. Take anyone who wants to come. Wait for me there. When the barriers go down, but Taesung was done talking. He had slipped into the mental space where words didn't matter anymore. Only action mattered now. In his corner, he opened his eyes and looked at the energy barrier. For days, he had been watching it. He had noticed that the electrical current pulsed with a rhythm. He had noticed that the controls were connected through the wall panel. Most importantly, he had noticed that small amounts of moisture from their breath and the humid air created tiny droplets on the energy emitters. Those droplets, over time, caused microscopic corrosion in one specific junction point. It would take weeks for that corrosion to cause a malfunction naturally, but with the right application of force, at the right angle, at the right moment, Tae-sung smiled. It was a cold smile, a reaper's smile. The hunt was about to begin. The night cycle came. The lights in the corridor dimmed to almost nothing. 2 guards remained on duty, sitting at their stations at opposite ends of the prison level. One was reading something on a datapad. The other was half asleep. In his cell, Tae-sung waited until both guards were distracted. Then he moved. He had spent days loosening a small piece of metal from the bottom of his sleeping bench. The pirates had searched him for weapons but never thought to check the furniture. The metal piece was small, thin, shaped like a nail. Tae-sung took it and moved to the corner of his cell where the barrier emitter met the wall. He had watched the maintenance crews before, knew how the panels connected. With careful pressure, he pushed the metal piece into the tiny gap he had found. Then he waited. 60 seconds. The electrical pulse had a pattern. He needed to strike at exactly the right moment. He counted in his head. 58, 59, 60. He kicked the metal piece hard, driving it into the corroded junction point. Sparks flew. The barrier flickered, and then with a soft humming sound, it died completely, but not just his barrier. The electrical surge traveled through the connected system. Every barrier on the prison level flickered and went dark. The guards jumped up, confused. What happened? The barriers are down. One guard ran to the control panel, trying to reboot the system. The other grabbed his weapon and started toward the cells to make sure no one escaped. He didn't see Tae-sung behind him until it was too late. Tae-sung moved like a shadow. His hand struck the guard's neck precisely, hitting a pressure point that made the alien's body go limp. The guard fell without making a sound. Tae-sung caught him, lowered him quietly to the floor, and took his weapon and security card. The second guard was still at the control panel, his back turned. Tae-sung crossed the distance in 3 silent steps. Another precise strike, another unconscious guard. The whole thing took 15 seconds. The prisoners stared in shock. Felix pressed against the opening where his barrier had been, his mouth hanging open. What did you? Tae-sung ignored him. He went to Ji-woo's cell. Can you fly a ship? He asked in Korean. Ji-woo's heart was pounding so hard she could barely speak. I'm an engineer. I can probably figure it out. Good, get to the shuttle bay. It's 3 levels up, section 7. Take anyone who wants to come. I'll meet you there. Where are you going? To make sure we can leave. He handed her the security card. This opens most doors. Go now. What about you? Tae-sung checked the weapon he had taken from the guard. It was a standard plasma pistol, fully charged. I have work to do. He disappeared into the shadows of the corridor, moving toward the upper levels. Ji-woo stood frozen for a moment, then forced herself to move. She ran to the other cells. Listen to me. We're escaping. Anyone who wants freedom, follow me now. Felix didn't hesitate. He ran out of his cell. Thudrock, the massive rock-like being, grunted and followed. The small furry creatures chittered nervously but came along. In total, 10 prisoners decided to risk it. The others were too scared or too broken to try. Ji-woo led them toward the stairs using the security card when they encountered locked doors. Her hands shook, but she kept moving. This was their only chance. Meanwhile, Tae-sung was already 3 levels up. He moved through the ship like he had memorized a map, because he had. Days of listening to sounds through the walls had taught him the ship's layout. He knew where the crew quarters were, where the armory was, where the engine room was. He went to the armory first. 2 guards stood outside the door. They were alert now because the alarm had started blaring throughout the ship. Something about escaped prisoners. Tae-sung appeared from around a corner, walking calmly toward them. Stop there, one guard shouted, raising his weapon. Tae-sung didn't stop. He moved faster, closing the distance before the guard could fire. A sweep of his leg took the guard's feet out from under him. As the alien fell, Tae-sung grabbed his weapon and used it to strike the second guard. Both guards went down. Tae-sung used the security card to open the armory door. Inside were weapons. Many weapons. Plasma rifles, energy blades, explosives, armor. Tae-sung took what he needed. A rifle, extra power cells, a tactical knife, and a small device that looked like a grenade, but was actually an electromagnetic pulse generator. He strapped the weapons to his body with practiced efficiency. This felt familiar. Wrong, but familiar. For 20 years, this had been his life. Infiltrate, acquire, neutralize, extract. The Reaper was awake now, and the Reaper knew how to hunt. Captain Dreth was on the bridge when the alarms went off. His clawed hands gripped his chair as reports flooded in. Barriers down in the prison level. 2 guards unconscious. Prisoners escaping. The human is out of his cell. Dreth felt his worst fears coming true. Find him! All crew to battle stations. Arm yourselves. Find the human and kill him. Gorvak, standing beside him, activated the ship-wide communication system. All crew, this is First Mate Gorvak. We have a dangerous prisoner loose. He is a human male, armed and extremely dangerous. Do not engage alone. Travel in groups. Shoot on sight. 41 crew members still capable of fighting mobilized throughout the ship. They grabbed weapons and formed hunting parties. They would find one human and overwhelm him with numbers, but the human wasn't waiting to be found. Taesung had reached the engine room. Inside, 3 crew members were working to keep the ship running. They turned when he entered, reaching for their weapons. They never got the chance. Taesung moved through them like water flowing around rocks. Every movement was efficient. No wasted energy. No unnecessary violence.
He disabled them and used their own tools to sabotage key systems. The lights flickered throughout the ship.
Life support alarms began to sound. The ship's computer announced in a calm voice, "Warning! Oxygen recycling compromised. Emergency power in 10 minutes." On the bridge, Dreth roared in fury. What is he doing? Someone get down there and fix it. But when crew members reached the engine room, Taesung was already gone. He had moved to the communications array. The crew was starting to panic. They had thought this would be easy. 1 human against 43 pirates. How hard could it be? But this wasn't just any human. This was someone who had been trained by Earth's military for 20 years. Someone who had survived missions that should have been impossible. Someone who knew how to turn a ship into a maze of death. Gorvak led a hunting party of 10 heavily armed pirates. They moved through the corridors in formation, weapons ready, checking every corner. He's just one man, Gorvak told his group. Stay together and we'll overwhelm him. They entered a cargo bay. It was dark, the lights having been cut. They activated their suit lights, beams cutting through the darkness. Spread out, Gorvak ordered. Check behind every container. They spread out. And that was their mistake. In darkness, the human could see them, but they couldn't see him. He had taken a position on top of a cargo container, completely still, controlling his breathing so it made no sound. He waited until they were separated. Then he dropped down. The fight was brutal and fast. Taesung used the cargo containers as cover, the darkness as a weapon. He struck from angles they didn't expect. When they fired their weapons, they hit each other more than they hit him. Gorvak realized too late what was happening. He tried to call for backup, but his communication device sparked and died. The electromagnetic pulse device Taesung had taken from the armory had disabled all electronics in the cargo bay. Gorvak was the last one standing. He charged at Taesung with a vibroblade, roaring in rage. Taesung sidestepped smoothly and struck Gorvak's arm with perfect precision. The bone broke with a crack. The blade fell from Gorvak's hand. Before the first mate could scream, Taesung struck him in the head. Gorvak collapsed unconscious. 10 down. Taesung took Gorvak's weapon and continued through the ship. Behind him, 11 unconscious pirates lay scattered in the cargo bay. On the bridge, Captain Dreth listened to the reports with growing horror. Squad 3 not responding. Squad 5 found unconscious in Corridor B. Engineering reports all systems failing. Life. Support down to 40%. He's everywhere. How can he be everywhere? Dreth realized the truth. They weren't hunting the human. The human was hunting them. Everyone fall back to the bridge, Dreth ordered. We seal the doors and wait for oxygen to be restored. Let him run around out there. He'll pass out from lack of air just like the rest of us. The surviving crew members retreated to the bridge, 12 of them, including the captain. They sealed the heavy blast doors and activated emergency oxygen supplies. We can outlast him, Dreth said, trying to sound confident. He's just one man. Then the lights went out completely. Emergency power was gone. In the darkness, a voice came over the ship's intercom system. It was calm, cold. The voice of someone who had done this many times before. Captain Dreth, you have 2 choices. Open the bridge doors and surrender, or everyone dies when the oxygen runs out. You have 5 minutes to decide. The crew members looked at each other in the darkness, their faces lit only by emergency glow strips. They had caught a monster, and now the monster was coming for them. Inside the bridge, 12 pirates sat in darkness and growing fear. The emergency oxygen supply was meant for short-term use only. Already the air felt thin and stale. Captain Dreth stared at the sealed blast doors. His 4 hands clenched and unclenched nervously. He had 2 choices, both terrible. Surrender to the human and face whatever punishment came, or wait and suffocate slowly along with his crew. One of his crew members, a young navigator, started crying. "I don't want to die." "I didn't sign up to die." "Shut up," Dreth hissed, but his voice lacked its usual authority. The minutes ticked by. 3 minutes. 4 minutes. The air grew harder to breathe. Some crew members started gasping. "Captain," another pirate wheezed. "We have to open the doors." Dreth knew he was right. Death by combat was better than death by suffocation. At least they had a chance if they fought. "Open the doors," he ordered quietly. The blast doors slowly slid open. Light flooded in from the corridor. Emergency lights had come back on. And standing in that light alone was the human. Tae-sung stood with a rifle in his hands, pointed at the doorway. His clothes were torn and dirty. He had blood on him, though it wasn't clear if it was his or someone else's. His face was calm, almost peaceful. "Weapons on the floor," he said. "All of you now." The pirates hesitated. There were still 12 of them. 12 against 1. Tae-sung fired a single shot. The plasma bolt struck the wall next to Dreth's head, so close the captain felt the heat. The shot was perfectly aimed, close enough to terrify but not to injure. I said, "Weapons down." "I won't ask again." The pirates dropped their weapons. What choice did they have? This human had disabled 31 crew members by himself. He had turned their own ship against them. He was something beyond their understanding. "On your knees, hands behind your heads," they obeyed. Even Captain Dreth, proud leader of the Crimson Talon, knelt before this one human. Tae-sung moved into the bridge, keeping his weapon trained on them. With his free hand, he activated the ship's control panel. His fingers moved over the controls with surprising knowledge. He restored life support first. Fresh air began flowing again. "How do you know our systems?" Dreth asked, confused. "I've been on ships like this before," Tae-sung said simply. He didn't explain that during his 20 years as an operative, he had infiltrated dozens of different vessels. He knew criminal ship designs better than most engineers. He locked the weapon systems, sealed off the crew quarters, and opened the communication channels. "Jiwoo," he said in Korean. "Are you at the shuttle bay?" Her voice came back, shaky but alive. "Yes, we made it." "All 10 of us." "But Tae-sung, there are pirates. They're secure. Start the shuttle. Be ready to launch." "What about you?" "I'll be there soon. I have to finish something first." Tae-sung turned to face the captured pirates. "You took innocent people. You were going to sell them as slaves. Some of those people have families waiting for them. Did you think about that?" Dreth said nothing. What could he say? The human was right. "I should kill you all," Tae-sung continued. His voice was still calm, which somehow made the words more frightening. "It would be justice. It would make sure you never hurt anyone else." The pirates tensed, expecting death. "But I'm not an executioner anymore," Tae-sung said. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm broadcasting your location and your ship's identity to every law enforcement frequency in this sector. I'm also transmitting evidence of all your crimes. The police, the bounty hunters, they'll all be coming for you." He pulled up financial records on the control panel. "I'm transferring all the credits you stole to accounts for your victims. When they're sold at slave markets, at least they'll have money to start over." "That's everything we have," one pirate protested. "Good," Tae-sung said coldly. He set up the broadcast system to repeat its message every hour. Then he disabled the weapon systems permanently and locked the navigation controls. The pirates would drift in space until someone found them. "Wait," Captain Dreth said as Tae-sung turned to leave. "Who are you really?" "What are you?" Tae-sung looked at him. For a moment the mask of calm slipped and Dreth saw something ancient and tired in the human's eyes. "I was a weapon," Tae-sung said quietly. "For 20 years I did terrible things in dark places so that people could sleep safely. They called me Reaper, but that life is over now. I'm just someone trying to go home. Will they punish us? The authorities? Yes, you'll go to prison. Maybe for the rest of your lives. But you'll be alive. That's more mercy than you showed your prisoners. Taesung left the bridge and sealed the door behind him. He walked through the corridor, past unconscious pirates, past damaged systems, past evidence of his work. He felt tired, so very tired. At the shuttle bay, Ji-woo and the other freed prisoners were waiting in a small transport shuttle. When Taesung entered, they all stared at him with a mixture of awe and fear. "Is everyone here?" he asked. "Yes," Ji-woo said. "Velox, Thudrak, the Keeble family, everyone who wanted to escape." "Good, let's go." Ji-woo took the pilot seat. Her engineer's training helped her understand the controls. With shaking hands, she initiated the launch sequence. The shuttle detached from the pirate ship and flew away into the darkness of space. Through the window, they watched the Crimson Talon grow smaller. Soon it was just another point of light among the stars. Inside the shuttle, the freed prisoners began to celebrate quietly. They had survived. They were free. But Felix noticed that Taesung sat alone in the back, his head down, his eyes closed. The merchant moved closer. "Are you okay, friend?" "I'm fine. What you did back there was incredible. You saved us all. I just did what needed to be done." "No," Felix said firmly. "You are a hero. You could have just escaped alone. But you freed us too. You could have killed those pirates. But you showed mercy. That takes a special kind of strength." Taesung opened his eyes. "I'm not a hero. I'm just tired of killing." Before Felix could respond, Ji-woo called from the pilot seat. "I'm picking up a signal. It's from a Terran patrol ship. They're asking for identification." Taesung moved to the communication panel. He entered a series of codes. Ones he thought he would never use again. Coast Operative Emergency Extraction Codes. The response came immediately. "Identity confirmed. Ghost Operative Designation Reaper. Status, alive," Taesung said. "Requesting clearance for Earth. I'm coming home." There was a long pause. Then clearance granted. "Welcome home, Reaper. Your service is concluded." Those words meant more than Taesung could express. Your service is concluded. No more missions. No more killing. No more being a weapon. The patrol ship guided them to a station where the freed prisoners could get help. Felix hugged Taesung before leaving. "If you're ever in the Sirius sector, find me," the merchant said. "I owe you my life. You owe me nothing. Just live well." Ji-woo was the last to leave. She stood before Taesung trying to find words. "Thank you," she finally said in Korean. "Will you be okay?" "I think so. What about you?" "I'll get home somehow. Back to Seoul, back to my family." She smiled sadly. "We're both going home, aren't we?" "Yes." She hugged him quickly, then left to join the others. Alone, Taesung took a small personal shuttle toward Earth. The journey took 2 more weeks. He spent most of that time sleeping, really sleeping, for the first time in months. When Earth appeared in his window, blue and beautiful and home, Taesung felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Peace. He landed in Seoul on a warm afternoon. The city had changed so much. New buildings, new technology, new faces, but the mountains in the distance were the same. The Han River was the same. He found his sister's apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. He stood outside for a long time, afraid. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she hated him for leaving? What if she had a good life now and he would only bring pain? But he had come too far to turn back. He knocked on the door. It opened. A woman stood there, 36 years old, with kind eyes and tired smile. She was holding a dish towel. 2 children ran behind her, playing and laughing. Heejin stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The dish towel fell from her hands. "Oppa?" she whispered. "Hi, Hyejin," Taesung said. His voice cracked with emotion. "I'm home." She threw her arms around him, sobbing. 20 years of grief and hope and pain came out in those tears. Taesung held his sister and cried too, something he hadn't allowed himself to do since he was a young soldier. The children, Minji and Jae-won, watched curiously. They didn't understand who this man was or why their mother was crying. "Who is that, Mom?" Minji asked. Heejin pulled back from the hug, wiping her tears. "This is your uncle. Your Uncle Taesung. He was away for a very long time. But now he's home. Are you going to stay?" Little Jae-won asked innocently. Taesung looked at his nephew, at his niece, at his sister. He thought about all the years lost, all the missions completed, all the lives taken. He thought about the Reaper and the weapon he had been, but that was over now. He was just Taesung again, just a man who wanted to be with his family. "Yes," he said, "I'm going to stay." And somewhere far away in space on the pirate ship Crimson Talon, Captain Dreth and his crew waited for the authorities to arrive. They would spend the rest of their lives paying for their crimes, but they were alive. The Reaper had shown them mercy. The story spread through the galaxy, whispered in spaceports and criminal hideouts. The story of the pirates who caught